Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast created for women who listen to and live by their deepest wisdom, their inner voice. This was made for you, the woman who feels pulled to more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to be a world changer. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am an inner voice coach. Join me here each week as we explore what it means to reach for your inspired potential, all while honoring your worthiness each and every day. Hello, you guys. This is Kelly, and you're listening to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to be back. I took some time off last week. I had a crazy week. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that my beautiful puppy Piper was sick last week and she was in the hospital for a couple of days. I'm happy to report she's doing much better. She's home and she's back to her normal self. So I'm just so thankful that she is okay. But, you know, when life happens, sometimes you have to put other things on hold. And that's what happened to the podcast last week. But I'm back and I'm super excited to have my wonderful guest, Karen Aberle, here to talk about relationships. And this is something that we don't talk a lot about on this podcast, but I love her approach to learning how to be you in a relationship. When we talk about so many beautiful things, we talk about how really we're not taught how to be in a relationship. You know, we're taught how to do math and we're taught how to write properly and we're taught all of these things, but we're not actually taught how to be in a relationship. What are the mechanics of that? How to communicate effectively? And so this is really what our topic is today. Before we get to the interview, I want to let you know that my new course, Tapping Into Your Inspired Potential, is available for sale. It is fantastic. I really, really love it. Basically, what it is, it's a 5-day journaling course, and you do this at your own pace. It comes with these beautiful journaling meditations, I call them. They're prompts that are set to music that you can write through. And I am just really excited to share this with you. So if you are ready to tap into your inspired potential, to really give up, to let go of feeling like you have to live up to something and instead begin to live into who you really are, this is for you. So if you want to check that out, you can head on over to my website at kellycovert.com/potential. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes and in your podcast app. So let me tell you a little bit about Karen. She is just so wonderful. Karen Aberle, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Love's Invisible Dance, has spent the last 30 years researching and teaching about relationship. The dance became visible to Karen through her extensive studies in the philosophy of language, an 18-year apprenticeship with the Huichol shamans of central Mexico, and her own 30-year marriage. Through her leadership program, Mindful Collaboration, Karen has coached individuals and teams in Fortune 100 organizations to achieve extraordinary results by better understanding how to learn, love, partner, and fight. The same skills she and her husband have taught around the globe in their deep relationship programs for individuals and couples seeking more love in their lives. A native New Yorker, Karen now lives in Dallas, close to the embrace of her children and grandchildren. You guys are just going to love this. Her wisdom is so deep and so broad, and I'm really, really excited to bring you this interview with Karen Aberle. Karen Aberle, welcome to In Her Voice. I'm so excited you're here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, it is my great pleasure. And I am just really excited to dive into what you call the invisible dance of love, of relationships. And I thought we would start with probably the biggest question there is, and that is, what is love?
Oh, it's a great question. People spend a lot of time looking for love like it's something that you find, like it might be hiding under a rock or around a corner. But love is a way that we dance in relationship with others. It's a way in which we produce caring, taking care of the concerns and the well-being of another person. And so from there, we can find all kinds of love, platonic love, familial love, intimate love. But love is a set of actions that you take, and it is a dance that you create with another person. Now, in the book, The Love's Invisible Dance, I talk about the fact that there are these 6 moves that we are doing all the time unconsciously.
Oh,
And
that sounds good.
and we've been doing them all our lives without knowing them. And one of the basic laws of relationship is that it happens in language, that we actually create relationship by the way that we speak and listen to one another. Who are you to me? We want to ask. And while we have bloodlines, familial lines, I'm a mother and I'm a grandmother, it's something else to create a relationship. Friends are in relationship, and in these relationships, we establish ways of being. What do I expect of you as a friend? These are things that generally go unspoken about.
Why do you think that are we afraid to talk about these things, or do we just not realize that we need to talk about them?
I think it's the latter. Right now I'm working on an article, and this article is called "Relationships Are Hard Because You Never Learned How to Do Them in School."
Yeah.
And, it's pretty interesting that you go to school and you learn these 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and have no access to what I call the 4th R, relationship, which is one of the most fundamental of human skills. Why aren't we teaching it? And my answer to that question is because we don't see it.
Mm-hmm. And what's the danger? I think it's obvious, but I think it's worth speaking out loud. What's the danger if we resist talking, learning, understanding what it means to be in relationship with someone?
Well, I guess we just keep bouncing in and out of relationship. It's not something that we're really awake to, that we have to learn. Where do you learn about relationship? You pick it up as you go. You look at your parents to determine what to do, or in my case, what not to do. And you kind of bumble along. And what I'm really interested in is changing this discourse about relationship and bringing it to consciousness. Gravity was something that was basically invisible before Newton defined it. Sure, people knew that apples fell down from trees, but they didn't really understand why that happened. And when Newton came along and said, look, this is a phenomenon of nature. There are universal laws about it. And when you learn them, you can go to Mars. And for me, it's the same. There are universal laws about relationship. One of them is that it does happen in language, and we know very little about that. And that we're constantly being drawn towards and repelled from other people. There's a certain energy that brings us together. There's an energy of attractiveness. And we actually have the ability to create that energy in our speaking.
So what I hear you saying is we can become magnetic to others if we understand how to use our language.
Exactly.
So what does the language piece, because I feel like, okay, here's my skeptic coming up. I feel like anyone can manipulate language if they want to. So that clearly, can make someone magnetic, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're entering into a relationship following the laws, right? Like following those basic premises of how to have a good relationship. So how do we get past that piece of it? How do we learn how to be truly authentic in our language?
Well, first you have to know what you're doing. For example, right now, you just said something and you were communicating one of 6 intentions. You are asking for something, you're asking for information, and that is linguistically called a request. Mm-hmm. So we need to learn how to make requests effectively. At the same time, we need to learn how to make assessments effectively as well, because assessments are always an opinion. And when someone says, I really like the way that you walk, what are they saying? We have to be able to listen and understand their intention, and we have to understand why they say what they say, and why are they making that assessment. So we begin to look much more deeply under the surface of the words.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so there's so many directions I feel like we could go here, but I think what I'm super interested in is this idea of the universal laws of relationship. You said that one of them is relationship happens in language. Can you share some of the others with us?
Yeah, there are really only 3 that I focus on. One is the fact that there is this energy that's bringing us together and pushing us apart. You know how you feel when you are attracted to someone. There is some energy that's bringing you there. And you also know how you feel when you're repelled from someone. There's an energy that's pushing you away. So you want to begin to see, what is it that calls you towards a person? And when I speak about attraction, I'm talking about something other than just the physical beauty that magazines will focus you on. What is it to be an attractive person? In my view, you're never more attractive than when you are open, operating in a mood of wonder. You have generosity. You show up as grateful. And you are interested in what is really going on in the world. When you have a self-confidence, when you know that you are perfect as you are and continuing to grow. This is a big problem, particularly for women. Self-confidence very often sounds like, oh, I'll be confident when I achieve this job or buy this house or have a kid, or all of these off in the future goals and ideas of perfection. But as human beings, we are constantly unfolding. We are constantly in a space of the possibility of learning. And so when I say, I'm a beginner here and I'm fine with that, I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm not going to beat myself up for them because I am committing to learn. And that's really the 3rd law of relationship, is that we are here to learn. And if we don't learn, we die. And there is a way for us to increase the speed and the effectiveness of our learning. And that's another thing that we don't learn in school. How do you learn? Learning is actually a domain of learning, like golf or piano or math. There are certain things that you can learn to become more effective at it.
Yeah. Well, so how do we increase the speed of our learning?
Well, the first thing that we have to do is to recognize that we don't already know.
beginner's mind.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know, it's a really good catchphrase, but in my experience, and I've been working for the past 30 years, primarily in large Fortune 100 organizations, we are trained from an early age to show up like we already know. You know, like we live in this looking good society in which knowing equals looking good. So if you already have to know, there's no opportunity for you to learn.
I love that so much, and I feel like that's worth repeated. If you already have to know, there's no opportunity for learning, because we miss out. We miss out on so many things. And, you know, I'm thinking of an example. Just today, I was in a meeting for the orchestra that I play in, and we were talking about board members. And this was a topic that I really didn't know much about a few years ago. And I said, you know, maybe this sounds crazy, but I didn't really understand how a board worked until a couple of years ago when I started becoming more involved. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, and the thing is, a lot of other musicians don't understand this, but they're not necessarily going to be able or willing to say, I don't understand this because of what you're saying. So it's just really interesting. It takes, I think, a lot of courage and trust in the people around you to be able to admit, you know, oh my gosh, I have no idea.
You know, and what's really even more bizarre than what you're saying is that there are people who are sitting on boards that don't know what they're doing.
Because they're afraid to ask.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, that we are so attached to having to look good. And in our culture, saying, I don't know, does not bode well for you. And especially when you're working within, you know, these large public corporations, people think that they're getting paid to have all of the information rather than they're getting paid to learn fast, because the world is changing fast. You know, Sears is gone. You know, Barnes and Noble is disappearing. Things are changing so fast, we don't exactly even know what the new games are. So as we build a relationship, and I often say this to managers who are hiring, it's like you have to set a context for how are we going to be together? How are we going to work together? You know, I'm going to make lots of requests to you, and I'm going to really want you to fulfill them, but I know that sometimes you won't be able to. So what I want you to do is to tell me that it's not good, or you have to counteroffer, or that you're not competent. And we'll work together to figure out how it will get done. Inevitably, employees will say, I think I have to do everything that's asked of me, and I think that I already have to know how to do it.
And then they end up making mistakes, probably, or could be costly mistakes because of that.
Really, and the thing is that when you're trying to look good, the thing is that everybody knows you look terrible.
Right. Well, so let's look at this idea in the context of a romantic relationship, because that is a place where I think most people would want to feel like they could be all of who they were. Does that get in the way even in those relationships?
Sure. In my chapter on intimacy, this is the chapter called Dancing Naked. Intimacy is the willingness to be mutually, deeply known. And I start the chapter by asking this question: do you want to be loved for who you truly are, or do you want to be loved for who you pretend to be?
That's
And,
beautiful.
well, you know, asking that question that way is like a no-brainer. At the same time, we enter into relationships anticipating that the person over there wants somebody who looks like this, or acts like this, who knows this, who succeeds at that, rather than allowing for a slow unfolding of our authentic selves. If we don't give ourselves permission to be learners, then it's going to be impossible to really be intimate with someone else.
Yeah. You know what I think of is that, especially in new relationships, but not necessarily, instead of abiding by what you call the universal laws of relationships, we have like all these other rules that we create and follow because we think we have to. And they seem, all of them, to go against the basic universal laws. And I just find that to be really interesting.
Can you think of one that pops to mind?
Oh, well, that I always have to be beautiful,
Uh-huh.
or that I always have to look a certain way in order for this person to love me.
Right.
Or I have to, for women, I have to play hard to get, or, there are all of these things that I can think of. And I haven't dated in a really long time. Let me be frank with that. But I just remember when I was dating, it was like, there were all of these questions all of the time. And it seems to me like if we were just able to like put them out on the table with true answers, all of the problems would be solved.
Yeah, and that's the way it is for most people. So there are, in my book, I offer 7 keys to authentic, joyful, and lasting relationship. And one of them is really to honor the other person, but also to honor myself. Do you know the expression namaste?
Mm-hmm.
How do you understand that what do you understand that to mean?
The light in me honors the light in you.
Yes, very much so. And some people think it means hello or how are you doing? But in order for me to see the light in you, I have to see the light in myself. And honoring is one of the 3 keys to even preparing yourself to dance, is to have self-honor and then be able to live honoring the light or the God in the other. If you're a god or a king or a queen, how would I treat you? And inevitably we wind up saying things like, shut up, or go to hell. How do you say that to a treasure?
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
we need to learn how to manage our moods and emotions, our fears and our angers. And this is part of the dance of relationship, is learning. Moods and emotions are a domain of learning also.
mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. So you have been in a 30-year relationship with your husband.
Right. And I also want to say that it's my 3rd marriage.
Thank you for being transparent about that. But
I had
30 years
to do some practicing.
a long time. And what I would love to know, how do you honor your husband? Like, what are some of the ways? And I know obviously it's very individual, but I love to hear how other people work in their relationships.
One of the ways is to be open to his decline, so that I might ask him to do something for me, and he has the freedom to say no. This is one of the biggest traps for people in relationship, is that they bring forth this idea, well, if you loved me, you would. What we define as partnership is declaring, which is one of the 6 linguistic moves in life. We declare for each other, to each other, your concerns are my concerns. And this is the foundation for partnership, when we both say that to one another. so that even when he wants something different than I do, it's not that I have to give up what I want for what he wants. We have to find a way together to become mutually satisfied. And it's a process that can take a week, a day, a month. It took us 7 years to buy a coffee table.
But you did.
We did. We did. And it's the same thing with buying a house. The things that he's looking for in a house, the things that I'm looking for in a house. And then finding how do we satisfy both of us at the same time?
Mm-hmm. So, since we're on the topic of your relationship, and I feel like there's always so much to learn from people who have been in relationships longer than we have. My husband and I have been married 19 years. I'm curious to know how, going back to the idea of attractiveness, because I think this is something comes up. You know, sometimes I feel that in long relationships, you lose that spark. Like you lose that excitement that you have at the beginning of a relationship where things are new and you don't really know each other very well yet. And there's a beauty of getting to know someone. And also there's that, oh, well, I know everything. I know the moods. You've learned the moves, right? How do you continue to be open to learning? How do you keep that spark going?
Well, it's a question of whether you feel like you've arrived in life or you're aspiring. You know, what is your story? You know, so you're married 19 years, you're a reasonably young woman. Where are you going? What sparks you? You know, how do you bring your enthusiasm to the marriage? What is it that you're inventing together? That's a challenge for both of you. And I see for me and my husband, there's a certain palpable joyfulness that we have in being in each other's company. You know, he has been a tremendous supporter to me in bringing forth this first book. And what is my life's purpose? What am I doing here? And I think that when I can be in touch with what's important to me and what's challenging to me, it becomes something that he gets very enthusiastic about as well.
Yeah, I love that. You keep coming back to this point in many different ways. And that is, when we are in relationship, we also must be in relationship with ourselves. Mm-hmm. We cannot lose ourselves in a relationship, because if we do that, then we're not going to be able to have a strong relationship.
Exactly. And you know, the way that you feel when you've just entered into a relationship where you're just discovering who this other being is, that's so fascinating, and you've got endorphins and all kinds of hormones that are carrying you. That's not real life. You know, that's Mother Nature working us to have us reproduce. But after that falling in love period, that's when we need to learn how to continuously create love and recreate passion. What are you passionate about?
Yeah. And these are questions I think that you can ask each other. Like, what a great question to ask someone that you've been with for 20 years. What are you passionate about? I mean, I don't think I've asked my husband that in a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I think that can change, and that can be something that we can always be discovering freshly.
Right. And, you know, it gets difficult when people get stuck in jobs that they've been in for 10 or 15 years, and there's a certain routineness, and there's not a focus on, why am I here? I think that when you reach a certain age, Maybe it's, in the mid 40s, maybe early 50s. All of a sudden you start looking at yourself a little differently, like how much time do I have here? And what did I come here for anyhow? And what is it that would have me say at the end of my life, boy, that was a ride. That was a joyous, amazing ride. I think that there are a lot of people who are stuck in a rut, doing their life, doing their routine, and not really giving themselves the opportunity to dream.
So true. So true. And I think that, again, it's back to that place of like, recognize what is inside of you. Don't lose that. Stay connected to that.
And the thing is, Kelly, that we need help seeing ourselves. We don't necessarily know what's inside us. Sometimes we feel a really strong urge, a great longing. But for many of us, we need to have an opportunity to think and to reflect. And for this, it's really useful to have a coach. And this is one of the takeaways from the book, is that if you really want to learn something, you need coaching.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Preaching to the choir with that one.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think that having someone who can very effectively reflect back to you what they hear you saying, what they see in you, someone that you trust, someone that can be objective in your life in that way is invaluable. I mean, I feel like I have learned so much from those women. And for me, it's been women that have been able to hold space for me like that. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes we get the feeling like we just have to figure it all out on our own. And that is not a requirement.
Yeah, it's not even a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you could give one practical starting point for someone who really wants to renew and energize a older relationship, or start a new relationship off on the right foot, what is the one thing you would say to them that is the most important thing they could do?
The first question that I always ask couples who come to me for coaching is if they have declared your concerns are my concerns. And invariably they haven't, because nobody ever told them to do that. That is a really important context for moving forward into the relationship. And then from there, the question that I spoke to a young man last week who has been living with his girlfriend for 3 years. I said, so what's the nature of your relationship? And he said, well, we're home for one another, we're comfortable with one another, we're respectful to one another, and all of these qualities that told me nothing about why they were in partnership, or even if they were in partnership. Are you partners or are you not partners? And if you're partners, the question is, why? What are you building? I don't need a partner if there's not something that I need to build. And I would say that for many relationships that have been just stagnant, or in a same old kind of way, I would ask them to consider, what are we doing together here? What is it that would make our hearts sing? Would you give yourself permission to even dream such a thing?
So beautiful. So beautiful. I love this. And I mean, I feel like these are questions we can ask now. We can ask those questions now and really move forward in a way that is, following the dance. Like you said, that invisible dance of love. So One of the things that I sense about you is that you have a deep spirituality, that you're deeply connected to your inner voice of wisdom, to what you know to be true about you and about who you are. And that's a lot about what this podcast is about, just having and helping women understand that it starts from inside of ourselves. Like that starting place is inside of us. And so I always like to end our podcasts with the same question to my guests, and that is, in your life, what does your inner voice say to you? What is your inner voice saying to you now?
There's, in my book, I spoke about having done an indigenous ritual called Vision Quest, where I sat on a mountain for 4 days alone with no food, no place to go, nothing to do. And to be quiet and listen is the most important thing that I can ever do, because the chatter that's going on in my mind probably is, the same as it is for everybody else. How can I learn to be quiet and listen? Listen to the rain, listen to my partner, listen to my children, listen to the person who's checking me out at the supermarket. There's much more listening that's required.
That is beautiful. Karen, thank you so much. This has been such a moving conversation for me. I feel blessed to have been with you this afternoon, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners how they can connect with you, how they can find your book, and all of that good stuff.
Okay, thank you. Well, Love's Invisible Dance is available on Amazon. I have a website called KarenAberle.com, which is KarenAberle.com. And there you'll find videos and events that are happening. And there'll be some ongoing courses that will be coming up in the near future too. I also have a new relationship competency quiz, which you can get on my website or contact me from there, and I will forward it on to you. It's new, and it's 26 questions that will let you know the opportunities for your learning in relationship.
Oh, that sounds fun. I love a good quiz.
Oh, good.
And we will put links to all of this in the show notes, and in whatever podcast app you're listening, you should be able to access them right there, and click on over to Karen's website, to her Instagram, and there's lots of ways to get these goodies that she has shared with us. So Karen, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your deep wisdom. Thank you for your willingness to dive into this understanding and share it with us. I'm so grateful for you.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I'm grateful to you, as I think many, many women are. Your support of women's wisdom is just very precious.
Thank you for being here today, for listening, for spending your time with me, for inviting me into your space and into your heart. I so appreciate you. I want you guys to know I have a lot of great things going on over on my website, kellycovert.com. I would love to connect with you on Instagram at kellyjcovert. Take a screenshot of what you're listening to and shoot it over to me. Tag me. I will share it. I want to spend time with you. I want to feel like I'm in the same room with you, even if we don't have the opportunity to ever be that way. So shoot me a message. Let me know what's on your heart, and I will get right back to you. I want to remind you, we are living in a world that needs you. We need you being you. We need you becoming more of you each and every day. You are worthy.